Hi everybody, my name is Yunjin Moon and welcome to iHome Church. I know that many of you had an incredibly exciting week because Pope Francis is in town, and also we had the Global Citizens Concert for those of you who are music lovers, and for those of you who are stargazers, certainly this day being the day of the supermoon, I'm sure is leaving a lot of people truly excited about all of these exciting things going on. And for those who know a little bit about the study of the stars, know that the supermoon kind of represents, or the moon in particular, represents the feminine and the emotions. And so I can see very much around the world, there's a lot of upheavals when it comes to our own emotional feelings, being triggered by many, many different types of things. And certainly in our community, we are not immune to those emotional triggers. But supermoon kind of represents, for a lot of the believers or stargazers or astrologers or whatever you want to call it, it really kind of represents an opportunity to learn how to deal with these feelings, and really kind of a time when we need to think about developing a certain understanding or a certain level of patience or understanding in response to the way we deal with our feelings and emotions. So after last Sunday, when I shared with many brothers and sisters the true family poetry, or the poetry that I have come to see revealed in my life by really kind of taking the Chinese characters of the sons and daughters of our true parents, or our first true family, and you put them in pairs, you get this beautiful poetry. And just to remind you, the poetry reads, when we can embody God's words in filial piety and inspire our inner beauty to arise, benevolence and virtue will be made manifest, and establish one nation under God's grace, and God's authority and power will prevail in goodness, and God's glory celebrated in beauty, and all will go well in the world of heart. And after last week's sermon, one of a dear friend of mine kind of reached out to me and wanted to share his heart, and he said, you know, I found the poetry so profound and so meaningful, but how do we go about accomplishing it? Or how do we go about really substantiating poetry in our life of faith, particularly in the life of a unificationist community? And I answered this brother by saying, well, my answer to the question, how do we accomplish this beautiful poetry in our life, is to really remind ourselves that we need to look beyond the obvious. Because when we look at something that is just so obvious to our eyes and so obvious to our ears nowadays, the mission of really building an ideal family and an ideal nation, an ideal world, just seems almost like mission impossible. And for those of us who do enjoy the Mission Impossible series starring Tom Cruise, you know, my children, especially my boys, absolutely love the Mission Impossible movies, because you know you're going to be entertained for a couple hours when you go to see this Tom Cruise movie, and you know, the protagonist Tom Cruise is going to be put into an incredibly difficult or an impossible situation. But the beauty of the movie is seeing this hero kind of deal with the impossibility of his mission, but somehow transform it into an incredible success or a victory. And so when I think about, you know, why is it that people, and my boys in particular, love this movie? Well, first of all, they love a really good hero, and they love all the gadgets and all the different things that the character of Tom Cruise is capable of doing throughout the movie. But when I thought about, well, what is it about this figure of Tom Cruise or any kind of action figures that our children enjoy and really kind of study what sets the hero apart from people who simply give up or people who simply surrender. And if we were to ask ourselves that question, well, something very interesting comes to mind. The thing about Tom Cruise and his Mission Impossible is that regardless of how impossible his mission is, he looks at his mission, unlike many of us, in a different way. He's not looking at it and telling himself this mission is absolutely impossible. You know, I am not going to be victorious. I am not going to find a way to solve my dilemma. What he does is he starts from the beginning with himself by looking at the word impossible as the way I understand it. He takes that word and instead of seeing defeat, he sees tremendous victory. Because the word impossible can also be seen as I am possible, meaning that as long as I am willing to look at it from a different point of view, understanding that I, as that hero figure, is being entrusted with this responsibility from God or from my, from my director of secret agency operations or whoever it might be, that I am being entrusted with this mission because they know, whoever that they might be, God or our boss or maybe our parents, know that we can absolutely figure out a way to do it. In other words, the impossibility becomes I am possible when we take responsibility or when we take ownership of the mission at hand and look at it in a different way. And instead of butting our heads against the mountain, figure out a way to climb over the mountain or go through the mountain by digging tunnels or whatever your creative mind takes you to. And so I realized that most people, when we're dealing with impossible situations, I know that lots of brothers and sisters have reached out to me and they've basically, given up. Many of these people, and understandably so, because the situation that our church is going through, what I call the growing pains, is incredibly painful, incredibly difficult, and it looks bleak, and it simply looks like mission impossible. But what I want to kind of remind all the brothers and sisters is that all of us, you and me, anointed by God to be living and working together with our true parents at this time, have all that we need to turn that impossible into I am possible, when we realize that we need to be the agent of change. We need to be the change that we want to see in the world, as Gandhi says, and really kind of be responsible for ourselves, for our couple, for our families, and start with the most important thing that Father has taught over and over again, which is that you and I, we are men and women of true love. And we need to go about our lives reminding ourselves to be that example of true love, regardless of how difficult life may be. But many of us, being confronted with an impossible situation, sometimes like to say to ourselves, well, it's just simply impossible. So I just want to get rid of the problem. I want you to take away my pain. I want God to deliver me and make my life good. These are the first thoughts that come into mind. And many of us simply want to just throw our hands up in the air and not realize that all of these wonderfully challenging people, have a purpose in our life, in that sometimes rubbing up against challenging or difficult people can really bring out the best in our capacity to love. And so really a life journey is about understanding the parental hearts of God and what kind of a heart God must have had when he created his sons and daughters. And so by having a family of our own, by having children, by dealing with all our siblings, by dealing with our parents, we gain the kind of wisdom and we develop the kind of heart that is really capable of bringing out the best in others by really being that proactive agent of change ourselves. And so one of the things that's really beautiful about the Reverend Sun Myung Moon's teachings, or the True Parents' teachings, is that Father always preached that the family is the cornerstone or the building block to building a world of peace. And so when we realize that we are a worldwide family, and that all of these difficult people, or all of these people that were feared, or all of these people that we do not understand, that we have to learn how to love them as a family, we realize that the option of just getting rid of them, or just, taking them away from our lives, or having God deliver us from these challenging, difficult people, is really not the best solution. We realize when we think about it, the impossible people in our lives, in the context of a family, we realize that we kind of have to take a different approach. And so I always like to start from the top. English is a wonderful language because you can have so much fun with the way the word is composed. And when you look at the word family, and you kind of take that as an acronym. A family is composed of F, the letter F, A-M-I-L-Y. And in my mind, when I wear my 2020 glasses of true love, what I see in that word is really a declaration of every human being alive as that child of God, to say F-A-M-I-L-Y, Father and Mother, I love you. That's where we need to start from. We need to say to God, Father and Mother, I love you. And we need to say to our true parents, Father and Mother, I love you. And we need to say to our parents, Father and Mother, I love you. We need to start from the top and really remind ourselves that that's where our heart needs to start from. Because then as that loving child of God that really wants to exemplify and embody true love in our lives, and wanting to convey it in the way we are practicing how to be compassionate to each other, we take the impossible people in our lives, impossible situations, impossible problems, and turn it into possible by being responsible. I am that child of God that will take the impossible and move it, transition it into the possible, starting with me. And so when I realized that, wow, family, we have to start with our Father and Mother up in heaven, our heavenly parents, and we must honor our true parents. That really is the unity of heaven and earth right now. And we must honor our father and mothers. And in a way, by doing so, we set a great example for our children to aspire to when they become true parents. Because if we cannot live by one of these principles, or one of the 10 commandments that God gave, honor thy father and mother, then what ends up happening is our very example of not being able to honor our father and mother will be passed down through the generations. But if we are to do right by God, if we are to do right by true parents, we have to start at the top. And we realize when we look at the word impossible, there are a couple things that really helps the impossible become possible. Well, when you look at the word and you reread it as I am possible, what you are doing, number one, is you are starting with the individual. You are starting with yourself. And so many times the letter I have been the guilty word in a religious setting. And because the religious life teaches really about the other and how we work vis-a-vis the other. And we have not been taught properly to really live a life of true love. So the I always got in the way. My ego, my desires, my wants always got in the way of everything else that exists in the world. But when we can really reclaim I as that child of God, as that child of our heavenly parent and our heavenly and our true parents, then things starts turning into place. We realize that we no longer have to be so ashamed of who we are. We have to be thankful and grateful for who we are, accept who we are, work with who we are, be confident and proud of who we are as that divine son and a daughter of God, and work towards mind and body unity and be the change that we want to be in this world, as Gandhi says. Then when we look at the word impossible as I am possible, the second thing we are doing is we are taking ownership. We are being responsible, saying, Heavenly Father, Heavenly Mother, our true parents, I am not going to blame you again for the impossibility of my life. All the impossible mission impossibles that you have given me, that many times we have criticized, that we have just really said horrible things about. I am not going to do the blame game anymore. I am going to take responsibility and realize that I have the power within. I have the love within, not only to transform myself, but to transform everyone around me, including the world. And so we are deciding to exercise our 5% responsibility because God has done well. God has really prepared all of us well to be that men and women of God. And the only thing we really need to do is take the first step and start being that individual by saying, I am not going to blame God. I am not going to blame true parents. I am not going to blame the leaders. I am not going to blame my community. I am not going to blame anybody. But I am going to be the change I want to see in the world. Even if I was born in the murky waters of the Unification Church, I am going to make it shine, starting with me. That's what God is waiting for us to see. And when we take the word impossible and really reimagine it and re-understand it as I am possible, what we are doing is really kind of pledging to ourselves and to God that we are going to be proactive. Too many times we as the flock following the shepherd are always waiting for the shepherd to deliver us, always waiting for the shepherd to guide us, to show us the way. But this is really the time when the children of God and children of true parents must learn how to be young and responsible adults. We need to be proactive. And instead of just waiting for true parents to deliver us, we need to be the kind of filial sons and daughters that anticipate what our true parents might need and do it. Take care of it. Do the work. In a way, help our subject. Help our father and mother. Help our heavenly parent up in heaven. And help to liberate them all with our love. So I know that many people, and I have been through this in my life of faith too. Many times I thought the only thing I really needed to do was follow and wait and everything will be delivered. Very Christian in my understanding. And a couple times throughout my life, I had this incredible revelation or vision or a teaching or instruction, whatever you want to call it, where God revealed himself and herself to me. And one of the most beautiful revelation when I asked God, what is love? God said, you are love. We are love. The children, the sons and daughters of the world are love. So we have an incredible responsibility. We tend to look at ourselves as impossible. But the way God looks at you and me is all the possibilities that we are going to do in our life and in the lives of our families, but also for the sake of the world. God is waiting for you and me. So, in this process of really kind of working out the impossible towards possible, and I have been stressing the need really to kind of develop this culture of love. And some people have written into me saying, you always talk about the culture of love, like hippie, hippie, anything goes, anything fuzzy. And if that is the way I have come off, then I am truly sorry, but that is not what I'm talking about. I am not talking about the fuzzy, wuzzy, hippie, hippie love, anything goes. There is a compass in the word compassion. When we are learning or practicing to be compassionate individuals, just take a look at the word. There is compass in the word that make up the word compassion. In other words, we believers or religious people on this journey to really become that fulfillment of true love in our lives, or that embodiment of true love in our lives, we have a certain understanding, because our compass or our core values tell us what is right and wrong. But the word compass is enveloped in this word called compassion, because the way that the compass, our sense or our understanding of what is right and wrong, is applied or expressed or conveyed to the world or to our most important and intimate relationships, need to be through love and not through condemnation and judgment and name calling, because we have a clear sense of right and wrong. We all have a compass. We all have a conscience in our temple that God has called you and me. But the way we express that, the way we convey that, the way we apply and practice that in our life has to be through true love. Because that is really the only way we can inspire the impossible to think I am possible. That is really the only way we can empower the impossible people in our lives to really want to be that incredible men and women of God. It's really the only way we can help the impossible people connect to each other, so that we can really stand together as one family of God, as one family, one united family that we can be proud of. So brothers and sisters, as God says, you are love. You and I, we are love. And instead of the impossibility of this mission impossible called building this ideal world, one family at a time, we need to tell ourselves, starting with ourselves and the way we speak to ourselves in our minds, that I am possible. We are absolutely possible, because we have our true parents right here with us. We have our family right here with us. And instead of going through a process, this constant and perpetual process of what I called crash dieting, quick fixes here and there, the difficulty of kind of implementing this understanding of impossible to possible is it requires a lifestyle change. Just like the way if you want to really be a holistic person in terms of your health, you cannot just go through a series of crash diets, but you really have to change the way we look at food, the way we understand our bodies. We need to have a healthy understanding and really kind of implement a healthy lifestyle. Likewise, in our life of faith, as we kind of journey on, and we are going to meet incredible people, as well as impossible people, as well as we're going to experience victories, as well as extreme failures. But how do we maintain and walk this path, being that compassionate men and women of God that God wants all of us to be? Well, we have to have a clear sense of right and wrong, but we have to take that initiative to really say to ourselves that we are going to love regardless. We are going to learn how to embrace our enemy and not just simply wish them ill and want to get rid of them, but we long to see them stand together with us as a member of our family. So, during the week when the Pope is in town, one of the things that the Pope Francis did was really visit the site of the 9/11 tragedy of the World Twin Towers. And they had a beautiful interreligious service there representing all the different religions. And the Pope talked about how the water, I guess they have I haven't been there myself, but maybe they have some kind of a waterfall symbolizing the tears that have been shed on that location where 9/11 took place. But how wonderful if we could take the impossible pain, the impossible suffering, that symbolizes these tears, and really kind of take it down to its essence. What are tears? Well, it is a water. It is a different kind of water. It is a water that expresses pain and suffering in this side of 9/11. But it can also be turned into joys of laughter and joyful tears. Or better yet, it could be turned and understood as that water of life that can not just remember the dead or remember the pain, but really celebrate new beginnings, celebrate the lessons learned, and how we're going to transform ourselves to be better men and women of faith. So I would like to leave you with a beautiful quote by Father. My father said in the book called Way of God's Will. Father said, "God's heart is the home of eternal blessing. Prepare within yourself a place where God's heart can abide. Then his blessing will flow through you." Again, Father is imploring us to kind of think of ourselves, to reimagine ourselves as God's heart. What is God's heart when God looks at you and me? Does God look at you and me and say, impossible? Well, maybe, sometimes. Sometimes I look at myself and I say, oh, impossible. But God's heart as that loving parental being is the heart of seeing the impossible as possible. And all the wonderful things that will come out of it once we put on our 2020 true love glasses and we reimagine and take another look at the word impossible, and we realize that the word impossible reads, I am possible. So brothers and sisters, please have a great week and know that our Heavenly Parent loves you dearly, and know that our true parents love you dearly. And what we need to work on is by taking that first step on really working on ourselves as that incredible individual, taking ownership and being proactive, and not just sitting around and waiting for God to deliver us, but be that men and women, be that son and daughter that can deliver God and really have him experience an incredible time of true loving. So have a great week and take care. Bye-bye.
The road is long, with many a winding turn that leads us to who knows well, who knows well. But I'm strong enough to carry him. He ain't heavy, he's my brother. So on we go. His welfare is of my concern. No burden is he to bear. We'll get there. For I know he would not uncover If I'm laden at all, I'm laden with sadness that everyone's heart isn't filled with the gladness of love from one another. There's a long, long road from which there is no return. While we're on the way to there, why not share? And the load doesn't weigh me down at all. He ain't heavy, he's my brother. He's my brother. He ain't heavy. He's my brother.
If you have any questions and comments, please leave them below the video or go to injinmoon.com and use the contact form. And don't forget to subscribe to our email list. And for those of you who want to contribute to our work here at iHome Church, just click on the donate button. Thank you.